Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Plane of the Dead, playing as the Empire against the Vampire Counts, and as you can see, I am being an absolute cheeser, and running the Temple of Luminarch, so, I've been a little sick of those Vampire Counts after that tourney, a little sick of them, so, figured, you know what, we're gonna smush them good. And, so, Temple of Luminarch, of course, the cheesiest unit in the game, almost. It's got enough Mintok, and of course it does have a death laser that basically kills most lords in just a handful of hits, so definitely some nasty stuff there. To make it work, we did bring a front line here of 4 units of greatswords, so I think greatswords are great in this matchup. No pun intended there. They'll cut through Graveguard. I'm pretty sure they'll even cut through Graveguard with great weapons. They'll hold their ground rather effectively. They've got very solid leadership. Yeah, they're just really solid. The greatswords are just really solid. There's not much else to say. They're basically immune to the lower end chaff. They're even Graveguard don't really do too much to them, which makes them really good. The only thing they have trouble with is, of course, heavy cav and monsters. But that's what you bring Demigraves and the Luminarch for, which is, of course, one of the other benefits of the Luminarch. If your opponent goes to say Vargulfs or Terrorgeists or stuff like that, you can snipe them down pretty good. 2 Royal of Gryphites out here on the flanks to provide, or 2 Demigryph Knights with Halberds, one which is the Royal of Gryphites to provide some anti-large AP. Some Spearmen out on the flank, one of them has shields because some has extra points, one does not. Karl Franz with all of his upgrades and abilities, and then a Jade Wizard with Regrowth and Earthblood. So nothing too fancy there. No shooting besides the Luminarch, because I don't, as I've said before, I don't really think shooting is the way to go against Vampire Counts for most factions. It's just too expensive. It's just too easy to shut down. This was not so much the case in the tournament, where you can only bring one summoner, but usually a lot of Vampire Count players will bring a Necromancer plus a Vampire Count Lord of some sort, and so you're going to be dealing with at least double summons of skeletons, plus you've got all their chaff and harass. So my opponent here did go with the Feasters in the Dusk, a bit of a cool regiment of renown that I sometimes call one of the hidden gems in this game. I think it is a great unit. It's got high speed. It's got poison. Of course, they just clock low-end infantry really effectively and really tear them to shreds. Up front, he does have 2 Direwolves as well as 2 Fellbats to zone away my backline. So there's a lot of backline harass here. He's got those 2 Fellbats, he's got the 2 Direwolves, and the Feaster in the Dusk, which is a lot of just low-end backline harass. Plus, he's got 2 Blood Knights as well as the Black Knights with Lance and Barding, so a lot of anti-large. But unfortunately for my opponent here, you can't see the Luminarch of Hish. Being able to stand its ground and fire is going to fire regardless, and just piles into this poor Vampire Lord who loses like half his HP. My opponent, otherwise, he did bring a bunch of Crypt Ghouls. Not a big fan of these guys in this matchup. I know they'll cleave through, say, Spearmen, but against greatswords just stick them the finger and hold their ground. They can just tear through these guys, no problem, despite the poison. So I'm just not a big fan of them. But we'll definitely see how they do here. Perhaps a little bit of a themed build there. 2 Graveguard anchoring things in the center, and that is basically it. You can see a nice little preemptive charge there, doing some damage to the greatswords. But over here on top of the Luminarch, we do manage to clean through those Fellbats pretty effectively. My opponent does use an Invocation of the Heck to heal up his Vampire Lord, getting about 1,000 HP back. Well, in the meantime, I'm just kind of milling around, looking for ways or looking for points at which I could snipe out the Vampire Lord, and trying to prioritize different areas with my cavalry. The Direwolves here getting sniped by the Demigrav Knights and getting their faces pounded in. Over here, Karl does dive into these Blood Knights and is really hammering away at them with Golem Raz, while the Greatswords do sort of pile in there against the Crypt Ghouls. That laser shot, I have no idea where it was going. It went straight to Kingdom Come. Just absolutely terrible shot there. I don't know. Empire gunnery sergeants there are just drunks. Regardless, in the front lines, the Greatswords, as you can see, holding, just cleaving through the Graveguard and the Direwolves who got thrown in. The thing is, so Direwolves are not a good unit to be using to try to bog down. If you're dealing with Spearmen, for example, Direwolves are a great unit to throw at them while your big stuff goes somewhere else. If you're dealing with Greatswords, that's not the case, because Greatswords are bonus versus infantry. These guys do count as a small unit or an infantry-sized model, and so they get cleaved to death. And you can see the Greatswords will easily tear through the Direwolves, and then, quite frankly, tear through the Graveguard. On the flank, my opponent finally does spring a Strap, the Feasters in the Dusk, wandering into position. Over here, you can see the Crypt Ghouls, even against Spearmen, who are kind of an optimal setup, are not doing that well. It's a pretty atrocious back-and-forth fight, so definitely some rough stuff. Over here, the Blood Knights getting shredded by the Demigrav Knights with Halberds. So definitely things looking pretty good, but unfortunately, one of the big problems here is that the Luminarch is just not able to get shots off. It is being kind of blocked off here by my own troops. You can see we're charging up another shot there, trying to get pounding here on the Vampire Lord. And it clocks everybody in the pits here. It clocks my Greatswords, it clocks Carl. And it clocks these Black Knights, but they are going to be able to force their way through, past these Great Swords. The Reikland Runefang is not going to be enough to hold their ground here, and my opponent is able to kind of force through. He's making good use of his summons here to stop my Demigryph Knights. I do hit these guys with the regrowth, thinking I was going to get a protracted engagement with the Blood Knights here, but it just didn't happen. My opponent just kind of ran away and went to fight the Luminarch. And the Luminarch here is running for dear life with still 8 rounds of ammo left, so definitely I'm struggling to protect it. And here you can see the Demigryph Knights actually getting surrounded, and the Greatswords break. So bit of a problem there, bit of a pickle. Luminarch running for dear life. Carl, though, hunting for the Vampire Count Lord, so doing his best to cut him down. Graveguard, of course, losing pretty decisively to the Greatswords. Though obviously if the Greatswords get tired out, the Graveguard will start doing a bit better because their armor value is going to drop. But my opponent making use of those recharge penalties to sort of break my troops. And just hounding the poor Luminarch here. I'm not really able to protect it. These Black Knights with Lances of Barding will easily be able to beat it down. The Luminarch is starting to lose HP. These Greatswords over here fleeing. We're just trying to thread through our troops, but my opponent is just surrounding my units one by one and beating them down. But the balance of power is swinging in my favor, and you might be wondering why it was suddenly swinging in my favor, despite the fact that my line is essentially buckled. Well, we are anchored over here. You can see we do get a nice little overcast of Earth Flooded, which is going to heal up these Greatswords, make them much better fighters. We are mopping up my opponent's front line. It's effectively gone. The Relative Knights have dealt with these Blood Knights, and the second unit of Blood Knights is gone, which really is only leaving these Black Knights with Lances and Barding, the Vampire Lord, and then a whole bunch of chaff. Unfortunately, though, the Templeoff Luminarch here is going to get caught and beaten down. So you can see there it is going to, it does, I think, actually get a shot off of the Vampire Lord. But after that, it is going to flee and just run for dear life. And you can see it's just running away there. Oddly enough, it's actually going to get chased off the field by a unit that's much slower than it is. These guys only have 42 speed. The Luminarch should have 50, but for some reason, it's not going to come back. So it's going to get chased off the field, which I'm not entirely sure how that works, because these guys are quite a bit slower. You'd think it would rally before then, but unfortunately it does not. In the meantime, over here, though, despite my opponent's best efforts, the Black Knights, Lance, and Barding not having a good time, and these Blood Knights getting baited way out of position, chasing after the Royal of Griffites. So definitely getting good value against these Royal of Griffites, just able to kill them off with these Blood Knights. But they're not in a position to be healed. They're not in a position to help their Vampire Count Lord here, who is just getting his face caved in by Carl Franz. And of course, Carl is still a very good sort of Lord Hunter. You can see Carl, one of the things I always do with Carl Franz is I never put him on the Barded Warhorse, so you get that extra mobility. 78 speed here against the Barded Warhorse for the Vampire Lord meant that I could catch him, and it meant that I was able to cut him down with Carl. And now my opponent is definitely in a big pickle, and even though it might not seem that way, even though he's kind of killing off my Jade Wizard here, and the Greatswords are really low, at this point, these Crypt Ghouls, they're not going to be able to deal with this many Greatswords. I've actually got the Demigryphs coming back. These summoned zombies are disintegrating on their own. It's only really, and this Jade Wizard is actually going to rally and come back. So even though we are going to lose the Templeoff Luminarch here, which I don't know how, but whatever, we did. My opponent's Feasters in Dusk, way out of position. Blood Knights, who got wiped out to man, yay, but also way out of position. They wiped out my Demigryph Knights. Good job. But like now they're so far out that they can't help. And now the Black Knights with Lance and Barding getting cleaved down by these Demigryph Knights with the halberds, with a little help from this Jade Wizard. My opponent does try to charge the Jade Wizard here and does a bit of damage, but too little, too late, as he actually gets slapped there by the Sorcerer. And here in the pits with a mob of Greatswords, Carl Franz in there, popping Foe Seeker. No more summons for my opponent, and these troops are just going to start disintegrating. We do charge in, and we are going to get a nice little Reikland Runefang, buffing all these guys up, making them much better at being dead killy. The Jade Wizard doesn't really have much into magic. We do get one more Earthblood in there, which is going to be more than enough. Carl, of course, on 2,000 HP, could easily take on 15 models of Blood Knights, and at this point, my opponent's army is simply going to collapse. You can actually see over here the Feaster in the Dusk getting chopped up by the Greatswords, and that is going to be game. So Pyrrhic victory for the forces of the Empire. The Templeoff Luminarch honestly didn't really pay for itself in this matchup. My opponent had a very good composition for shutting it down. He had 4 light harassment units. He had the Feasters in Dusk. He had 3 heavy cav units. So he played very well on that front, on shutting it down. However, the Luminarch did force out quite a few heals and quite a few summons and things he probably would not want to be doing. and wasted some of his wounds in magic. He did go with a generic Vampire Count Lord to get this width of an army, which meant his Lord just was not that good. Didn't have the greatest casting capacity at all. Was not a great melee combatant, even though Vampire Lords are okay. They're not amazing. And it was just kind of crippling in that sense. And in the meantime, the front line was just able to hold the greatswords. Yeah, some lost, or fled, but some held out, and you can see hundreds of kills in there, just cleaving through those ghouls in the Graveguard. And honestly, even the spears held out okay against the ghoul mob. Carl, of course, monstrous work. 65 kills on Carl is not bad, and a lot of it was against Blood Knights. Of course, he did snipe out the enemy Vampire Lord. Demigryph Knights, the Royal Griffiths had a bit of a rough time. They got mobbed by summons, and they got chopped up by Blood Knights on cycle charging, but they did okay. And Demigryph Knights with Halberds definitely doing some good work. Just able to slaughter a unit of Blood Knights for very low losses, and then helping deal with the Black Knights later on. For my opponent's build, interesting take. I really don't like Crypt Ghouls. I think Crypt Ghouls are a trash unit. They're very susceptible to shooting. They're not able to beat great swords. They're not actually that good against squishy troops, and against heavy cav, which is kind of Empire's forte. They're just not that great of a unit. I don't know. They're good against state troops. The lower end state troops. They're decent, but they're so expensive. I just don't find them good. Feasters and Dusk I think are great because they've got stalk, and they can sneak up on your opponent from behind. They're faster as well. But Crypt Ghouls, I don't know. I've just never found them to be that good. Obviously I have a different baseline composition I run usually, but I definitely would have swapped the Crypt Ghouls out. This is like what 1,000, 2,000 points worth of Crypt Ghouls. I would have dropped that for like the Stern's Men and an extra unit of Graveguard, and then throw some zombies in there. And I think you would have been much better served than with all these Crypt Ghouls who cleaved through some spearmen. Yay. But just didn't really pay for themselves. But regardless, good game to my opponent. VM von Karstein here was very close, very tight match. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below if you're not already. If you have any comments, any criticism, anything like that, as usual, be sure to post down below, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.